Libris.com is fantastic. And I haunt used bookstores and antiquarian bookstores like there's no tomorrow. And of course, libraries. I also am going for tactile details. So I have a sign on my desk that says, it's in front of me the whole time I write, what does this place look like? What does it smell like? What does the food taste like? What do things feel like? And what do they sound like? In other words, I want my 5 senses engaged. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to use all 5 in one scene, you know. And she looked around and she smelled peat smoke and she could taste it in her mouth and it felt gritty to her hands and it sounded like, you know, no. But pick one of those sensory details so the reader goes there. And then the other question besides the 5 senses is, how does it affect me emotionally? When you go to your storyland, and I cannot emphasize enough the value of the investment of going to where your stories are set, even if it's overseas and it's expensive and all that, even just one time, and bring home more than the usual. Bring home weird stuff. For example, when I was in the Highlands, I got this little sachet of Highland lavender with, of course, a tartan on it. I bought this in 1998. That's a couple years ago. And it still smells like lavender. It's also good for headaches, by the way. And it just takes me there. Another thing I picked up on the way were a couple of nuts. She's saying I can't see them. Can you see them? Am I holding them up? Yep, an acorn that fell from a tree in a kirkyard, a churchyard, in a church in Scotland where one of my scenes takes place. So I can still hear the rattling of the nuts, even though I picked these up more than 20 years ago. I also picked up something they call a horn spoon. In the 18th century, very few people could afford silver. The average person ate with a horn, whoop, hello. And then she dropped the horn spoon on the floor. Luckily, these things are not breakable. And the horn spoon was made out of a horn, very light, feels like plastic, not. But remembering what this feels like helps me remember when my people eat, that's the feeling they would have in their mouth. You bet I've eaten a bowl of porridge using this. So I can experience breakfast the way my heroes and heroines ate it. And the last thing is a rock that I picked up on an island in Scotland that has a Celtic cross on it. What I love about this rock is it's exactly the size of my hand. And sometimes when it's time to pray, which it is a lot when I'm writing, I'm hanging on to that Scottish rock. If this stuff is too weird for you, then you're probably not a fiction writer, because we are weird people. We hear voices. Our characters talk to us. We smell their peat fire. We go where they are, because that's how it comes alive on the page, is it has to come alive inside us first. So what do I take with me when I go? And I wrote the contemporary novels. One was in Virginia, one was in Pennsylvania. I went there too to do my research, you bet. Maps, obviously. I took a small digital recorder. Forget that now. You just take your phone, talk into that. I always travel with a list of books I already own, because when your list starts getting pretty long, you'll buy a book you already have at home. So I travel. Embarrassed to tell you, I have 1,000 books about Scotland in this house. We almost have a whole room that's nothing but Scottish books. I'm very embarrassed, but remember how long I've been writing these, okay? I take a measuring tape. Well, who needs that? You do, because you want to see when you go into a museum, how far off the floor were their tables? It tells you a lot about the chairs they sat in, and how comfortable or uncomfortable it might have been to sit at those tables if your character is a larger person. You need a magnifying glass, because these books that they wrote back then, I don't know what the deal is, but they were tiny, tiny, tiny type. So I always carry a little one, a little Victorian one, actually, so it makes me feel like I'm in the time period, so I can read what's in front of me. And I take a list of questions that I need answered. Now, I'm crazy enough that after I finish writing a novel, okay, just grown, it's okay. I go back over to Scotland. This is what all my frequent flyer miles are spent on. I go back to Scotland with the printed novel next to me, and I drive everything that's in the novel. So if I say I'm at the top of a hill, I make sure if I'm saying on that hill, I can see whatever, I make sure I can see whatever. And sometimes my memory is very faulty. Oh my word, I forgot. You can't see that from here. How far down this road am I going to go till I can see that? Ah, it's the next hill. Okay. OCD? Oh yes, I know. I know. When you get to the place, this town, local, regional, national, international, when you get to your place, your story land, here's 10 places you want to visit. Woof, we're going to run out of time if I don't hurry. First one is the first people you talk to is at the B&B or the hotel or the inn where you're staying. I always introduce myself to the person at the front desk and say, I'm a novelist. I'm here to do research. I tell them what I'm there to find out because they are a fount of knowledge, unless they're from out of town and just started last week. But then they probably know who is. They'll say, look, I don't know anything. But the night clerk, they've been here 30 years. They'll be able to help you. Second place is the public library. I always walk in the door telling them who I am, giving them a business card or a bookmark if I have one. My first 5 trips to Scotland, I was not a published writer, so I had nothing to give them. But as time went on, I never walked in the door of a library without one of my novels. So I could say, here's this, please put it on your shelf. And after a few years, it was amazing. They'd say, oh, you're Liz. We already have you. Thank you. But in the beginning, no, and it's okay. Again, introduce yourself, ask them where their local resource shelf is, other novels by local authors. And again, you can't check out a book because you're not from there, but they usually will let you sit for quite a bit of time at their desks and take those notes right into your phone. A used antiquarian bookshop, I always chat up the owner, ask about their stock. Some antiquarian bookshops are super organized. You can go right to what you need. But I know you've been to a used bookstore where it is higgledy-piggledy, baby. There's stuff stacked everywhere. No doubt, though, the owner knows where stuff is. Save yourself some time. It just so happens the first bookshop I went to in Scotland, not only was the owner hugely knowledgeable, not only was his stock only Scottish historical books, is God good? But he was a map maker. By profession, he worked for the Ordnance Survey. He made maps. So in the front of all my novels is a map, and Benny Gillies drew it. And it just because we connected and stayed connected, and probably half my stock came from his shop. So he's good to me. And yes, I paid him, of course. Museums are awesome. Take photos if you can without a flash, or use your recorder, talk in the details. And the sign that says don't touch, I amended that in 2 places to don't let anybody see you touch. Because when I went to Jane Austen's house, you bet I touched the desk she wrote at. It was quick, but I had to do it. And when I went to Robert Burns' home and it said, do not touch, reader, I touched. I did. With the excuse that it was so fast, I could hardly have left any cells behind. Historic sites. Here's where you want to get to know the docents, the ones that walk you through. Get their names. You're going to thank them in the book. And so get their names, ask questions. They love people that actually care about history. So many tourists walk through and it's just, oh, yeah, this is very fascinating. If you go up to a docent and say, tell me everything you know about this piano, they're so happy. They've been dying for somebody to ask them about the piano, or the man who lived here, or the people who worked in the kitchen. They're so ready. So take it all down. Use what you can. Thank them in your thanks. And obviously, you're going to hit the gift shop. I love the historical reproductions. This is called a porridge spurtle, and it's what they stirred their porridge with. And when I hold things that I know my my characters used. I love it. Another thing I found, this in an antique shop. It looks like just a knife, but friends, it's a paper knife. You know how old books sometimes have ragged edges on the ends of the paper? Do you ever wonder why that is? Well, it's because when they made the books, they were folded pages, and the person who bought the book also had a paper knife, and they cut apart the pages, hence those ragged edges. Now, today you can buy brand new books that have those kind of edges, but the reason they were there in the first place is the owner of the book had to cut them open. How about that? So I love having this, and I've gotten books old enough, I have to cut the pages open. It feels so exciting. What can I say? Restaurants, you want to eat the traditional food. So you want to find a restaurant. Oh, somebody says they have some of those books and never knew that. Isn't that the coolest thing? I love it. You could probably get one of these online now. Search somewhere, they're going to have paper knife for you. Probably if you put in Victorian paper knife, you'll get something close to the real one. If your waiter is chatty, ask all kinds of questions about the food. Oh, sometimes they'll even escort you back to the kitchen. You want to find out what goes with the food and eat all the stuff that the people would have eaten. Your church in every town is your best source of resource. If you're writing a Christian novel, talk to the pastors there. They know the people, they know the town, but most of all, they know God. And I have spoken in the 3 major towns that I put stories in. I've actually spoken in those churches because I got to know the pastors so well. They said, come, have tea at our house. Oh, come, speak in our church. I'm in. 9th thing is the churchyards. The kirkyards are fantastic to walk among the dead people of your time period. That's where I get all my character names. I'll take a Christian name, a first name from one tombstone and a surname from another tombstone. So for my made up characters, I'm not actually writing about somebody from their graveyard, but 2 names put together. Finally, antique shops. For anything you can find there, even if you can't afford it, you can look at it. I did bring home 1 pewter plate and a length of very old tartan. And yes, that's where I got my paper knife. Oh my goodness. Okay, are we out of time? We are. So I'm just going to give you, because if you're using the handout, what those last 3 things are, because if you're like me, to leave a handout blank at any point is horrible. Talk to people everywhere you go. Ask them about their words. I use a lot of Scottish words in my novel. So I'll ask people on the street, do you ever use the word argle bargle? And if they say, oh, yes, well, then I know, okay, that's a real word for this part of the world. I ask them about the history of the buildings. Anybody, I'm saying anybody I meet. Hi, I'm an American, and they laugh and say, no kidding. And I'll say, could you tell me about this? Do you live here? What the heck? They don't know who you are or care, and they'll never see you again. Be bold. And the 3rd thing to ask anybody, but especially cab drivers, is what's your hidden treasure in this town? What does almost nobody know about? Whew, they'll take you to it. I had a cabbie in Edinburgh drive me to a neighborhood. He says, no tourists ever find this. Check it out. He spent an hour with me, walking me through this neighborhood. Can you imagine? But he was so excited to share his hidden treasure. And of course, I gave him the world's biggest tip. None of this stuff comes free, but oh my goodness, the value of it, incredible. Last thing I'm going to say is, if you haven't figured this out, a lot of this travel research, on-site research, it's best done by yourself. I always travel alone because if I go with somebody, I'm talking to them and I don't engage the people around me. And they don't usually want to interact with you. 2 Americans, they just let you talk among yourselves. But if you're alone, it's a very friendly countries around all over the world, everywhere, Japan, everywhere, Singapore, everywhere I've ever been. If they know some English, they're excited to speak with you. So speak with them. So if you have a partner you're traveling with, well, maybe they go and enjoy a day in the park. You go do the research. Final question I have is, how much time and money should you invest? Here's what you need to ask yourself. Is this 1 book? Is it a trilogy? Or is it my career? I only write Scottish historical fiction. I will never write about the history of any other country because my husband will not let me go anywhere else 20 times. My husband will not let me buy 1,000 books about anywhere else. So I made the investment knowing that Scottish historical fiction were the 3 words God whispered to me, the ones I heard in my heart. So that's where I need to focus when I write fiction. Well, I'm so sorry. We are out of time, and I'm hoping if there are questions, I'm seeing like 41 things in the chat. Can I go look at them? And then I know you guys have got to go, and maybe they just like shut us off, but I'm going to scroll up and just see what we have here. Okay. I just got here. Oh, I know how that is. The good news is this whole thing is recorded, so we're fine.
Not all of it. I kind of screwed that up.
Okay. You were helping each other. Oh, I love this. It's being recorded. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, and the majority of my talk was not recorded. Oh, wow. A filled in handout. It will be pages. But I'll see if I can do that. Oh my goodness. It really will be pages and pages. It'll actually be the notes to my talk, and I could probably make that available easily. How's that? Blessings, friends. Someone asks, if you can't find anything in writing about something, is it safe to create your own details? Yes, absolutely. If you do your due diligence on research, can't find it, you go right ahead and make it up. You're allowed. They do it in movies all the time, and they do it in novels all the time too. So you do your best. If you can sleep at night, you've done your due diligence. You go right ahead and make it up.
Thank you, Liz. It was great. Bye.
Bless you, friends. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Liz. It was great.
Bless you, friends. Thanks for being here. Sorry it was such a fire hose of information.
Thanks, Liz. This is Barbie. I'm so glad that it got it calmed down a little bit so I could listen to your whole thing.
Was it not calmed down in the beginning?
Oh my goodness. All day yesterday and today, well, today slowed down, but yesterday I would answer 1 email and 10 more would pop up.
Oh,
I was just, it was fun if I wouldn't have been so tired, but it was crazy. But it's calmed down now, so I'm catching up.
very good. Well, someone
Thank
asked
you
if I
so much.
could provide a filled out handout.
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, that's okay. I'm glad it was me. I'm not sure the best way to do that, but anybody can email me and I can send you the notes.
What is your email for that, Liz?
Okay, just liz@lizcurtishiggs.com. So it's easy.
Okay.
Liz@ all one word, lizcurtishiggs.com.
Thank you so much.
My
You're a blessing.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
encouragement twice today, Linda. It meant a lot.